Welcome to Paradox Church. My name is Minori Tsukimoto.
And my name is Tsukimoto. Our family started attending Paradox at the beginning of this year.
Whether you are joining us in person or online, we are so happy you decided to participate in church with us this morning.
By show of hands, how many of you enjoyed the fabulous Easter spread of sourdough, sticky rice, fruit, crackers, egg bites, and matcha this morning?
This spread was a gift given to us by our very own Orchid Guile, her daughter Megan Bilbao, and her granddaughter Jasmine Bilbao. Will you please join me in thanking them?
Orchid and her family have been attending Paradox since the very first service our church held. And their family's participation has blessed our church for over 9 years now.
To all of the Guile and Bilbao family, we want to express our gratitude for you for making Paradox your spiritual home. Thank you.
If this is your first time here, welcome. You picked a great weekend to see what Paradox Church is all about.
What makes this church different from most churches is that sermons at Paradox start discussions rather than end them.
In other words, feel free to disagree with Pastor Craig as much as you want. You do not have to agree with everything he says to be part of this church.
The point of the sermon, of following Jesus, of being part of a church, is that we might all grow and become more loving people. Hopefully, today's service will inspire all of us to talk more openly about what it means to become more loving people.
Normally, we have an after-church discussion group which keeps the sermon conversation going. But we have a special activity at the end of the day, church, so there will be no after-church discussion group today.
Our special activity is tied directly into our weekend-long celebration of the Easter story. This year, our theme for discussing the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ is darkness and light. By a show of hands, how many of you joined us last night for our Good Friday service, Doubt Night?
In honor of the cross, we share our doubts with each other. This practice reminded us to trust that God can be found even in the absence of God. If this sounds like a paradox to you, then welcome. We are glad you are here.
Today is part 2 of our Easter celebration, Holy Saturday. Holy Saturday is the day after Jesus was executed on the cross and the day before he conquered the grave with the resurrection. On this day, we remember the death of Jesus Christ and the life we live between darkness and light.
Pastor Craig will lead us through a highly interactive service today, and our musicians have selected songs which capture the emotion of this sacred day. We hope you enjoy this entire experience.
And then tomorrow, we are all going to Appleton Ranch in Colton to participate in our Easter sunrise service at 6 a.m.
6 a.m.? Why so early?
We meet at 6 a.m. for a short walk to honor the journey of Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, Salome, Joanna, and the other women who, according to the Gospels, walked at sunrise on the first Easter and discovered the empty tomb of Jesus.
And while our family will be attending tomorrow's sunrise service for the first time, we have all heard it's one of the best days of the year at Paradox. The church even provides breakfast burritos and coffee for everyone.
We'd love for you all to attend with us, even if it is your first time. Parking is slightly limited, so please carpool and consolidate cars as much as possible. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.
At 6 a.m., don't be late, because try as we might, we can't really hold the sunrise back for you.
Lastly, we want to say thank you to everyone who supports Paradox with their financial contributions. Your generosity makes Paradox available to everyone who wishes to participate.
Thank you.
If you want to make a donation, you can give online at paradoxredlands.com, over Venmo, or drop a donation in the offering bucket, which we will pass in just a moment.
But before we collect the offering, reach underneath your chair or in the seat back in front of you and pull out one of these connection cards.
These cards make it so much easier for our church staff to provide spiritual care for all of us. On these cards, you can write a prayer request, a life event, or anything else you want to share with our church staff.
This past week, Aaron McMullen, whose family started attending about a month ago, wrote this in response to a question. What brought you back to Paradox after your first time here? She wrote,
the intellectual conversations about the Bible and faith, the music. I love all the kids that play in the band. What a community you have created for them. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing.
To all of the McMullen family, welcome to Paradox. We are so glad you found us and have participated in this church with us for the last month. Thank you.
Let's take 2 minutes and fill these cards out together. You may drop your completed connection card in the offering bucket that will then be passed. After we collect the offering, we will officially begin our Holy Saturday service with a prayer. Thank you.
Dear God, on Holy Saturday, we ask for patience, honesty, and solidarity. Give us the patience we need to see the beauty in the present, even if the present isn't what we want it to be. Give us the honesty we need to speak about our entire human experience, so that our hope for the future may be genuine. And give us the solidarity we need so that we may always remember we have each other and we have you, even in the face of death. In the human name of Jesus and the eternal name of Christ, amen.
Good morning. We are in a series called, or in a weekend series called Darkness and Light. And to talk about this day that is Holy Saturday, I want to do a 4-part sermon, because why have one sermon when you can have 4, right? So anyways, we're going to go through 4 parts. Part 1 is called Remembering. Part 2 is called Missing. Part 3 is called Speaking. And Part 4 is called Giving. Now, I want to take care of a few logistics here at the beginning so that way it doesn't interrupt the flow of this 4-part sermon. We are going to do communion after Part 1, and I want to say a few things about communion. If this is your first time at church in a while, welcome. We're glad you're here. We don't care what you believe or what it is that you personally identify as with religion. We want you to know that everyone is welcome to participate in communion. This is not a who's in and who's out kind of ceremony. It is very much we remind ourselves that we are one in the body of Christ, or one is as all of humanity. And so we'd love for everyone to participate. The second thing is we practice intinction, and intinction is a fancy word for dipping. And what that means is when you come forward, you will come up here when we do communion, and you will take a piece of bread that is given to you by one of our liturgists, and then you will receive it and then dip it into the cup, and then you will take a bite of that after you have dipped it into the cup. Now, in the cup is a divided little divider, and in that cup on one side is white grape juice, and on the other side is red wine, so you can go according to your preference. And we also have gluten-free options for anyone who has gluten allergies. If you do have gluten allergies, please come up to this side where we'll have a gluten-free option for you. Now, that's out of the way. We just want you to know everyone's welcome. The second thing I want to say is if everyone would be willing right now to reach underneath their seat, you will find a white card that is blank. This will be part of the service. We really want to make sure this is a very interactive service as we talk about Holy Saturday. And so I will tell you what to write on those throughout this service, because ultimately this is going to be an inward journey of reflection. Now, as each part begins, you will see a graphic like this that says Part 1, Remembering. And as each part is coming to a close, there will be a question on this screen. So this is going to be a sample question. When you see a screen like this, you're going to go ahead and write. I may invite you, I may not, but you can start by writing at the top of this card what your favorite color is. There's clearly one right answer, so please don't get it wrong. But just go ahead and write their favorite color at the top, and when you see this kind of screen with this graphic and a question on your right side, make sure that you go ahead and answer it. That's part of this whole experience, and keep that card close to you. It's going to be filled out throughout this service. So with that in mind, we are going to dive into darkness and light and have a conversation about Holy Saturday and begin with part 1, which is remembering. When we talk about Easter weekend, everyone is familiar with Good Friday, the day that Jesus was executed and placed on the cross. The Bible has several verses dedicated to these hours in which Jesus was both crucified and then hung on the cross and then died. In fact, if you look through the 4 Gospels, all 4 of which tell the story of Jesus, you can find significant portions of this book dedicated to telling you about how Jesus was executed. When also we talk about Easter weekend, most people are familiar with Easter Sunday, the day that the tomb was discovered to be empty. And if you look through all 4 Gospels, you will find that there are several verses dedicated to telling you how the tomb was discovered to be empty, who was there, and what they did after they figured out that Jesus had risen from the dead. But more and more people are more and more unfamiliar with what happened in between these 2 very famous days. This is a day that we call in Christianity Holy Saturday. And it is a day of silence. And each gospel gives only half a verse to Holy Saturday, and one even says we don't even need to mention what happened on Holy Saturday. The Gospel of Matthew says after the Sabbath, just skipping forward to Sunday. The Gospel of Mark says when the Sabbath was over. The Gospel of Luke gives a full sentence at least, but only half a verse when Luke says on the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. And John conveniently skips over Sabbath, the day that Jesus was in the tomb. And if you buy a modern calendar, chances are here in America that it will denote that there are 2 days on Easter weekend that are worth noting. You'll look on the 18th of this year, and it's Good Friday, and the 20th, the Sunday, says Easter, and you'll notice that the 19th, the day we're on now, is blank. We don't even mention Holy Saturday. And I have to tell you, the fact that we talk about Holy Saturday as much as we do at Paradox is unique because we are a church that meets on Saturdays. And I'll tell you, when I'm hanging out with other pastors, one of the most common questions I get is, what do you guys do for Easter? You know that's on Sunday, right? Like, what do you guys actually do? Because it's the biggest day of the year. Do you just skip it? To which I say, no, we wake up at 6 a.m. and go to Colton. And we have a great time, and people love it. There's no microphones. There's a guitar. We sing a few songs. I share a few thoughts, and then we all eat a meal together in celebration. And they hear this, and they compare it to their own church experience, which is often the biggest production of the year, and they say something like, I've never thought about doing Easter that way. And while there is something about celebrating and having a big production, I have found that if churches aren't careful, they can skip over Holy Saturday, which, if you consider the original Holy Saturday, this day must have been really hard for the people who truly love Jesus. I mean, this is the day when Jesus was in the tomb, and there wasn't a whole lot of hope going around for the early people who followed Jesus. This was captured in a painting by Andrea Mantega in the 15th century, and then updated just a few years ago by Kahende Wiley, a beautiful painting. And it captures kind of the feeling of Holy Saturday. And the more I talk about Easter, and the more years that go by as a pastor of this church, I've learned more and more that if you just skip over Holy Saturday, resurrection seems really hollow or superficial. You see, without death, resurrection is meaningless, right? And the more you leave that part out of the conversation, the less resurrection can actually mean something to us in 2025. This is, of course, part of a broader theological concept that was first taught to me by the great Richard Rohr. I'm going to teach you some fancy theological words, but please don't be intimidated. He calls it non-dual awareness. Other people call it unitive consciousness. I prefer unitive consciousness. These are fancy ways to say that if you subscribe to these, that it is the perception and acceptance that everything is one. And so what Richard Rohr would teach is he would say, there is no life without death. And so you have to have one in order to have the other, and you can make more peace with death when you recognize its relationship with life. So while that may sound good on a theological page, I want to tell you a story that happened several years ago. I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again, particularly on Holy Saturday, because it really embodies what Holy Saturday is for me. Back in March of 2009, I proposed to a woman named Kimberly. She said yes. I'm still excited about it. And 2 months later, we tried, but we couldn't wait. We got a dog out of wedlock. And I know that pastors have a reputation of exaggerating stories. I want you to know this is not an exaggeration. This is really what happened. I'm going to tell you that ahead of time because it was so shocking when it happened. Day one of bringing this dog back to Kimmy's house, Kimmy and I were not living together at the time, and Kimmy had 3 roommates. And so we brought this dog back to Kimmy's house to live with Kimmy and her roommates. And one roommate looked at this dog on the first night we had there. The first thing she said to us about this dog was she said, "Cute dog. It's going to suck when you have to put her down." And I remember hearing that and thinking, did she just say that? Are you serious? And I remember hearing that and being kind of upset, being kind of frustrated, being like, what's her problem? But wouldn't you know it, 12 years later, we did have to put Bella down in 2021. And it did suck. She told the truth right at the beginning. And it's almost like she was trying to offer us wisdom a little bit too late, which was, hey, you know it's really hard to go through that journey of saying goodbye to your dog, right? And a question that arises then is like, well, I don't really want to go through that because that's not fun, so is there a way to avoid the suck of putting your dog down? And there's a very easy answer to this, right? Never get a dog in the first place. If you don't get a dog, you never have to go through the pain of putting a dog down, right? This is unitive consciousness. It's similar to what I feel when I stand on a stage. You can't stand on a stage and hope to inspire people and hope to connect people without also opening yourself to offending them. And I remember I gave a sermon about the time that this picture was taken here on your left. And I gave a sermon. I thought it was pretty good at a former church. And after the service, I heard some nice compliments. I heard some not so nice compliments. But one woman came up to me and she said, I think your sermon was really good, but I couldn't hear any of it because your hair was so long, so why don't you get a haircut next time? Which was so creative, I had to admire it, right? And I frequently hear from people, how do you deal with the criticism? It must be really hard to stand up on stage and know that people will criticize you. Well, there's one very easy way to avoid all this, right? Never get on stage in the first place. My wife and I, we have a family member who has never once tested positive for COVID. You know how she does it? She never took a test in the first place. She believes it's a hoax. And so if you just never take a test, you can't test positive for it, right? But when you think about this in broader terms, you may or may not be aware of this, but our estimates are that about 9,000 people died in America yesterday. There's about 9,000 Americans that die every day. And we had this service called Good Friday, and people weren't coming to us broken up about it unless they knew one of the 9,000 that passed away. And we're able to function and move on as a society because it doesn't really affect us because we've accepted that as part of life. But if you love the person that is one of the 9,000, it's really hard. And so you can actually avoid all of the suffering that comes along with saying goodbye to a loved one by never loving someone in the first place. So when I think about this dog, and I think about the last picture that was taken before we got the dog, I was actually at an Angel game where I caught a ball for the first time in my life. I look at that guy, and he has no idea what he's in for because it was always Kimmy's idea to get the dog. And then the next day, I took this picture, and my heart was instantly captured by this dog. And it wasn't supposed to be. And sure enough, 12 years later came the day when it really sucked to put her down. And I point all this out because it's helped me understand love and life and death and grief and sorrow. Because when we talk about Jesus, Jesus is someone who constantly calls us back to the action of love. Jesus calls us to become more loving people on a regular basis. And what we need to acknowledge with that is that there is some unitive consciousness that goes along with that. Because when Jesus calls us to love, Jesus is also calling us to suffer. And the easiest way to avoid suffering is to never love anything. And what this teaches us is that as counterintuitive as it may be, the reality is love and emotional suffering are not opposites. They're actually the same thing. And that can be difficult to accept because every time we open ourselves to love, we are opening ourselves to suffer. And when we talk about this in the context of death and what it means to grieve someone who we have loved before, what it teaches us is that grieving is how we express our love for those who have died. I remember when I was young and growing up in the church, I frequently heard about heaven and how Jesus was coming back and those who were chosen and deemed worthy would be saved, and the other ones, well, we try not to think about them too much, right? And I remember asking a leader of a Bible study once, hey, I know some people who aren't Christian. It seems like it'd be hard for me to say goodbye. How am I going to live in heaven if they aren't there with me? And the Bible study leader quoted a verse from Scripture. He quoted a verse in which he said, don't worry, the Bible tells us God will wipe away every tear. In other words, God will cause you to forget the love you once had. And that was hard for me to hear. And it taught me something about funerals because back then I often heard about how great it was at funerals when somebody who was a Christian would stand up and say, like, I'm filled with grief, but I have hope, and this hope is that I will see this person again soon. And what was hard about that is it almost always felt like a repression of grief. And it was celebrated by Christian communities, by people who said, like, isn't this wonderful? They're not grieving as much as they could because they have the hope of Jesus Christ. It's like, but is that what we're supposed to do? Repress, stuff down our grief? Or go fully into our grief? And the more the years have gone by, the more I've come to terms with the fact that the best funerals aren't the ones that ask you to repress your grief. The best funerals are the ones that lead you further into your grief. Because your grief is an expression of love. And the best funerals are saying, why don't you go fully into that so you can understand what you are feeling? And when I think about Holy Saturday, this day where Jesus was not risen from the dead, and what happened just a few hours before when Jesus sat with his disciples around the Last Supper, he held up a cup and a piece of bread, knowing he would die soon, and wanting to tell them, you can remember me. You don't have to get over me. You can remember me going forward by this cup and by this bread. In 1 Corinthians, Paul says that Jesus said these words to his disciples, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, this is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance for me. In the same way, he took the cup also after supper, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. So we're going to take communion in remembrance of Jesus this morning. But not just Jesus, because whenever we remember someone, we are participating in communion because we are all made in the image of Christ. And so as we go throughout this service, I want to invite you to think of someone who gave you a great amount of love in your lifetime. And during this service, I want you to think about them the entire time we are talking. And as we take communion, I want you to take communion not only in remembrance of Jesus, but in remembrance of them as well. So, take your paper out and write on this at the top of this here, right underneath that color, on Holy Saturday, who do you want to remember? Who is the person that you choose to remember through the rest of this service and for the rest of this day? If you are a kid and you haven't experienced a death in your family, it can be a pet or it can be a friend that moved away. I want everybody to participate that can, so if it's somebody that you're just missing, that would help a lot. Now, I'm going to pick someone from my own life, and I'm going to share some stories about her. I'm going to pick my paternal grandmother, Bonnie Ray Hadley, who did not want to be called grandma a day in her life, so she said to all her grandkids, call me Bonnie, which is super weird for so many people, I know. It was completely normal for us. And she raised all of these grandkids. She was very involved in all of our lives. And as I go through today's service and take communion, I will do this in remembrance of Jesus Christ and of her. So take a few moments, think about who you want to remember this morning, write their name at the top of this card, and then let's take communion together. Thank you.
The same rule applies to goodness and grief. For in our great sorrow we learn what joy
One of my favorite authors is a man named John Green, who is famous for writing young adult romance novels, which apparently I love. His most famous book is called The Fault in Our Stars, which came out in 2012. And then his most recent novel was in 2017. It was called Turtles All the Way Down. And both these books presented ideas that helped me change the way that I think about death. And to talk about Turtles All the Way Down, I actually want to read part of the book for you. But in order for us to talk about the book, I need to give you some rudimentary astrophysics that we all need to get on the same page on. And there's a literal rocket scientist in the second row, so I'm a little nervous as I do this. But does anyone here know how far the sun is away from the Earth? 93 million miles is correct. And how fast is the speed of light? Yeah, Bodhi? Not able to count that. You can actually count it. It's 186,000 feet per second. Right? Feet? Did I say that right? No. Miles. Is it miles? Yeah, it's miles. I caught myself. Anyways, what that means is it takes the light from the sun 8 minutes to get to the Earth. So if the sun went out right now, we would still see the sun for the next 8 minutes until it went out. When we look at Saturn through telescopes, we are not seeing Saturn as it is now. We are seeing Saturn as it was about 70 minutes ago. And when we look at the Andromeda galaxy, we are not seeing light that has just been emitted now. The light is 2.5 million years old. So it's possible that the Andromeda galaxy all went dark, and we won't know about it for another 2.5 million years. That is fundamental to understanding what happens in Turtles All the Way Down, which is, once again, a young adult romance novel. Now, the book revolves around the main character, Asa Holmes, and she's the one who tells the story. The story is told first person from her perspective. And several years before the book occurs, she lost her dad in a car accident. And the one thing that she has to remember her dad regularly is she has his phone. And the main way that she likes to remember her dad is she actually scrolls through the photos to remind herself what life looked like from her dad's perspective. And she deals with this grief all the way through this book, Turtles All the Way Down. And eventually she meets an old friend named Davis Pickett, who they haven't seen each other for years, but they met at a grief camp several years before the book takes place because Davis lost his mom. And so they've reconnected, they started talking, and they are starting to fall in love a little bit the more they get to know each other and hear how each other has processed the grief of losing a beloved parent. So the scene that I'm about to read from you unfolds under a canopy of stars at Davis's house when Davis invites Asa to come up to his room and go look at the stars through a telescope. And this is where the book goes from there. This story is told in the first person from Asa's perspective. She leans down, looks through the telescope, and she sees a bright dot through the lens of the telescope. "That's Tau Ceti," Davis said. The way the telescope was zoomed in, I couldn't see anything but darkness and one jittering disk of white light. Tau Ceti is 12 light years away from us, similar to our sun, but a little smaller. 2 of its planets actually might be habitable. Probably not, but maybe. It's my favorite star, Davis said. Asa then thinks, I didn't know what I was supposed to be seeing. It was just a circle like any other. But then Davis explained, I like to look at Tau Ceti and think about how our sun's light looks to someone in Tau Ceti's solar system. Right now, the people of Tau Ceti are seeing our light from 12 years ago. In the light they're seeing, my mom still has 3 years left to live. This house that we're in has just been built, and mom and dad are always fighting about the layout of the kitchen. In the light they see, you and I are just kids. We've got the best and the worst of it in front of us. Asa then speaks up and says, we still have the best and worst of it in front of us, don't we? To which Davis said, I hope not. I sure as hell hope the worst is behind me. Asa then thinks, I pulled away from Tau Ceti's 12-year-old light and looked up at Davis. I took his hand, and part of me wanted to tell him that I loved him, but I wasn't sure if I really did. Our hearts were broken in the same places, and that's something like love, but maybe not quite the thing itself. It sucked having a dead person in your family, and I knew what he meant about seeking solace in the old light. 3 years from now, I knew he'd find a different favorite star, one with older light to gaze upon. And when time caught up with that light, he'd love a further star and a further one, because you can't let the light catch up with the present, otherwise you'd forget. That's why I liked looking at my dad's pictures on his old phone. It was the same thing, really. Photographs are just light and time. And when I think about these words, I think about my own life and a star that is not 12 light years away, but 34 light years away. This is Pallas, which is 34 light years from our planet, and it's about 10 times the size of our sun. And just for comparison, that's our sun next to Pallas there. If we were to be able to be in Pallas's solar system and look at the Earth's light, you would probably see my family and me taking this picture with my grandfather and my grandmother and my awesome cousins. And while my grandfather drove this Dodge Stealth that's in the picture, my grandmother drove a red cabriolet convertible, and she would always pick us up on Mondays after school, and we would get to go to Bonnie's house for several hours before my parents would pick me up. I don't know if my parents know this or if they just turned a blind eye, but every day she'd pick us up on Monday. She'd take us to TCBY. There's 4 of us cousins that went every Monday. And she'd let us order whatever we want. So we, of course, ordered the parfait, which you get to pick 3 toppings and 2 ice cream flavors. And we'd mix and match some things, but my favorite was always the white chocolate mousse yogurt with Butterfinger on top. That would always be the top 2 layers of my parfait order. Cookie dough would be on the bottom, and then I'd mix and match a little bit in the middle there. But it was always white chocolate mousse and Butterfinger on top. After eating this, we'd go to her house and watch TV as long as we wanted. We watched Saved by the Bell, followed by Full House, and then Family Matters in that order. And we'd also play games with her. We got to Skip It. I don't know if you know much about the Skip It, but the best thing of all is there's a counter on this ball. Nope, nobody. That's the jingle from the ad. Good times. With my grandmother, with Bonnie, we'd play Hide the Thimble, which I think just really kept us quiet for hours on end. We played board games that are severely dated now, like Tornado Rex. My brother and I would get G.I. Joes and play them, and I used to be scared to admit this. I'm not scared anymore, because my cousins Leslie and Emily are smarter than us, and because they have stronger personalities, we'd often play My Little Ponies. And if you don't think I actually liked My Little Ponies, I will tell you Lickety Split is the best. I know this, so hopefully you'll acknowledge that I'm in the club. And we'd also play Pretty Pretty Princess, because once again, Leslie and Emily would want to play that, and we kind of liked it. Who am I kidding? And we do this every Monday, like games, parfaits, TV. It was the best, and it was so good. It was like the highlight of our week. It was better than even the weekend for my cousins and me. It was so good, in fact, that my cousin Emily, who's pictured here, when she was in first grade, we had to start going, in kindergarten, we used to go to school to only 12 p.m., and then Bonnie would pick us up. In first grade, though, we had to wait till 2:30, and Emily didn't like that. So every Monday for first grade, second grade, third grade, and I think fourth grade, she would fake a stomach illness and start the party early by having the office call Bonnie and having her pick her up early. And I remember watching this red cabriolet drive out of the school parking lot, and I'd look, and Emily would be like, bye. The best part of all this is Marilee, her mom, Emily's mom, had no idea until about 20 years later this all occurred. And I tell you all this, it's good for me to tell you this because this was so much of what formed my childhood. And if you ask me, what do you miss the most about your grandmother? What do I miss most about this person I'm remembering? It's just Mondays. It's not some big trip. It's not any grand gesture. It's just going to her house on Monday after school, not feeling any kind of pressure to produce or be better, but just being who I was and knowing that I was loved. And I want to ask you this morning, what do you miss most about the person you're remembering today? I know it can be hard to pick one thing, but just pick one, the first one that comes to your head, and focus on that, because it is good to remember and remind ourselves that we miss someone. Amen. The second novel that changed the way I thought about death was called The Fault in Our Stars, which was made into a major motion picture, and it revolves around two young adults falling in love once again. And the main character is named Hazel Lancaster, and she falls in love with a guy named Augustus Waters. Now, they meet at a cancer group that is talking about how to live with cancer because they're young people living with cancer. And so there's all sorts of questions that are brought forward in this book about what does it mean to love in the face of death. And toward the end of the book, Augustus, or Gus, as he's referred to frequently throughout the book, gets a really bad prognosis, and they say he's only got a few days left to live. So Hazel, along with a couple other friends, put together a funeral service for him that he can attend so he can hear how much he means to them. And I've read a lot of theologians in my life. I don't think I've ever heard a better eulogy at a funeral than this one. And so I would like to share that with you this morning. The story is once again told in the first person from Hazel's perspective. And she stands up at this funeral for her boyfriend, Gus, and says this. My name is Hazel. Augustus Waters was the great star-crossed love of my life. Ours was an epic love story, and I won't be able to get more than a sentence into it without disappearing into a puddle of tears. Gus knew, Gus knows, I will not tell you our love story because, like all real love stories, it will die with us, as it should. I'd hoped that he'd be eulogizing me because there's no one I'd rather have. I started crying. Okay, how not to cry? How am I? Okay. I took a few breaths and went back to the page. Hazel then says, I can't talk about our love story, so I will talk about math. I'm not a mathematician, but I know this. There are infinite numbers between 0 and 1. There's 0.1, 0.12, and 0.112, and 0.0112, and an infinite collection of others. Of course, there is a bigger infinite set of numbers between 0 and 2, or between 0 and 1,000,000. In other words, some infinities are bigger than other infinities. There are days, many of them, when I resent the size of my unbounded set. I want more numbers than I'm likely to get, and God, I want more numbers for Augustus Waters than he got. But Gus, my love, I cannot tell you how thankful I am for our little infinity. I wouldn't trade it for the world. You gave me a forever within the numbered days, and I am grateful. When I hear those words, and I think about my grandmother, Bonnie, it got really gnarly at the end because she had Alzheimer's. And I have these wonderful memories of Monday afternoon. And then there's like this long gap to the point where she couldn't take care of us, but we still had her in our lives, and it was really difficult. And as a teenager, I would greet her and say whatever I could, but if you've ever had anyone in your family that has Alzheimer's, you know how difficult it can be. And while she passed away in 2007, I hadn't had a real conversation with her probably since 1997, 98, somewhere in there. And so the memorial service for her was a strange thing because it's like we finally got to talk positively about her again, rather than really explore our grief from the whole situation. But it was a good memorial service, and it meant a lot to me and the people that were there. It's funny, I think about her quite frequently, particularly on Monday afternoons. And there was one time in 2015, a rather coincidental story happened where I was at the Denver airport. And I was walking through the Denver airport, and I had not seen one of these in a while, but sure enough, in one of the terminals, they had a TCBY. And I was like, well, I'm going to order a parfait. They apparently don't stock parfait cups at TCBYs in the airports. So I said, well, what can I get? And they said, you can get one flavor with one topping. I said, this is communism. But I said I'd like white chocolate mousse with Butterfinger on it. And I went and sat down and just like instantly started weeping as soon as I tasted this thing. And it's so dumb. It's so dumb because it's not good. We're not talking about a la minute ice cream here, right? We're talking about mass-produced Butterfingers, for crying out loud. And yet all these memories come rushing back to me. about all the good things of this woman and just the unconditional love she gave me week in and week out, not only on Mondays, but beyond. And I just really missed her in the middle of Denver airport terminal sitting in one of these seats. And I want to invite each of you, as you think about the person you're remembering, if you had the chance to just say one more thing to the person you remember today, what would you say to them? If I had the chance to speak to Bonnie, I would say to her something like what I read in that book, which is, on a Monday afternoon every week, you gave me forever within our number of days. I want to thank you for the little infinity, because it still impacts me, and I still think about you, and I miss you, and I love you. When we talk about Holy Saturday, it's the day that was a very real experience for the early followers of Jesus. And Holy Saturday every year should invite Christians everywhere to look inward and ask some very difficult questions that are worth asking and should be revisited on a yearly basis at least. Questions like, what if Jesus never rose from the dead? And while that may seem like an inappropriate question for Christians to ask, it was a reality for the very first Christians. When on Saturday they were like, what if this never changes? Another question we could ask is, what if there is what if this life is all there is? What if there is no afterlife? Because in this moment, if we say the resurrection is the gate to that, it was a real lived experience for early Christians. And when you consider those things, if those things came true and that was the reality that unfolded with no resurrection, a question we should ask is God still good at that point? Or would God be bad? I think about a parable Peter Rollins told several years ago when I was hearing him speak. And he said, I want you to imagine that I had the power to touch people, and the minute I would touch them, they would live forever. So I could walk around and touch them on the forehead, and they would never die. But let's imagine, he said, that that's the only power I had. And I could help them live forever, but I couldn't give them anything to help them experience the depths of life, to help them experience what true love is and what forgiveness is and what it means to grieve. I could only allow them to exist for an unlimited number of days. He said, well, if I couldn't give them any of that, and I was able to force them to live there forever, I wouldn't be an angel at that point. I would be a devil. And heaven would be filled with screaming people longing to die. Now, that's a bit of a dramatic parable, but at the same time, it gets at what the real Christian message is. Is this something that is all about self-preservation? Or is it something that helps you experience the depths of what it means to be human in this world, here and now? And when I think about this story that started this whole conversation about a dog that I loved, that on the first day, Kimmy's roommate said it's going to suck when you have to put her down. The reason it's so shocking for us is because what she is saying, if you read between the lines, is, listen, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to give your heart away to a dog because it's just going to be stomped on and it's going to be miserable. And I think about all that happened between the first picture I took with my dog Bella and the last picture I took with my dog Bella, and I have to ask, was it all worth it? Well, stuffed between these two pictures are so many walks with this dog, because I would walk this dog 5 days a week whenever we were in town, and we'd go for 2 miles, and more people knew me as the guy walking the dog than a pastor of some church somewhere. And I tried walking without the dog afterwards. It was meaningless. I didn't enjoy it at all. And the fact that she walked with me for all of those hours and all of those days, I found some real meaning in between. And if you were to ask me, did it suck to put your dog down? 100% yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. I wouldn't trade those memories for the world. And this dog was part of my life for 12 years, which is a significant portion, no matter how long I live, right? And I think about how grateful I am that I knew this dog and it was part of my life. Well, it's easy to talk about death. It's a lot easier to talk about death when it comes to dogs. But it can be more difficult when it comes to being human and talking about the human beings that we love that we've lost. I think about one of the earliest pictures I have of my grandmother and me. It's this picture here where she's holding me. That's my cousin Zach behind us two. And I was born in this world just feeling loved by this grandmother, by this woman. And last week at Paradox, somebody took a picture of me giving communion. And I think about all that happened between that picture and this picture, and I have to ask myself, is all of this worth it, even with the pain of burying a loved one? And I would say, yes. I have still found this life to be worth living. And I think of the words of the woman who wrote the book of Song of Solomon when she writes at the end of her book as she's wrapping up things and talking about how love is one of the most powerful forces we can participate in. She writes these words. She says, "Seal me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is strong as death, passion fierce as the grave. In other words, she says it's worth it because of love, even though we feel the sting of death. And while it's been painful to particularly watch my grandmother go through the pain of Alzheimer's, there's so many memories that are filled with just love and overflowing with love, and I don't see it stopping with her. It's not like my life was great while my grandmother was around and then it stopped being great after she was gone. I've seen bits and pieces of her all around me, particularly when her son, my dad, picks up my kids on Saturday morning and walks them to the car. They go to Pancakes with Pops every Saturday, and it's his little Monday with both of them. And he just did it this morning, once again, because he spends so much time with them on Saturday mornings. And it's the same feeling I get when I think about being picked up on Mondays by his mother. I see it in my own mom, Bonnie's daughter-in-law, who takes the kid once a week. Right now, her day is Wednesdays, and the kids love Wednesdays more than just about any other day of the week. They cannot wait to go to Nana's house. And when I drop them off at school, they're like, Nana's picking us up today. And they're so excited. And I remember feeling all of that. And Kimmy and I have chosen particularly to live in this area because my mom and dad live here, and we want them to have those memories. And also, Kimmy's sister lives here, Kimmy's brother lives here, and we want them to have those memories of Auntie's and Uncle's house. And I also just think about that moment in the Denver airport where I was just weeping because I was eating TCBY. And I was next to my daughter, who was not even 2 at the time. And how do you possibly explain why Daddy's crying in the middle of the Denver airport? And so I tried to share with her how great my grandmother's love was for me by the only way I knew how at that moment. So I took a video of sharing this. So is it worth it? It's a question worth asking on Holy Saturday. And I think the way I've found that it's worth it, as painful as it is to say goodbye to somebody you love, is how you pass it on to other people and how you see them and remember them in your life around. When you miss them and remember them and celebrate them and talk to other people about them, it makes life worth it, even when it's difficult. And so the last thing I want you to consider as you look at your card is this question, which is, you have received so much from the one you are remembering today. How can you give part of that gift to another? And my hope is that my life is one that gives love away as generously as my grandmother did in the same kind of way. Amen.
Tears as he spoke of your mother's health. I guess a part of him just couldn't return. Forgiveness is a lesson he cursed you to learn. As your much too young now to write these words down. Darkness exists to make light truly count.
Kai and I will each offer a short prayer and then invite you to participate in a closing ritual for our Holy Saturday service.
You are welcome to say amen at the end of either or both of our prayers. If you feel like our prayers resonate with your soul, will you please pray with us?
Dear God, give us the courage to travel further into grief rather than avoiding grief. May we always remember our grief is the tangible expression of our love. Amen.
Amen. Dear God, may we find spaces to continue to grieve those we have lost. And may we find a profound sense of gratitude in this grief for the time we spent with those we loved. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us for our Holy Saturday service today.
Our Easter weekend continues on Resurrection Sunday tomorrow at 6 a.m. at the Appleton Ranch. We would love to see you all there.
If you need the address, please speak with Pastor Craig or Jasmine after today's service.
Remember, our after-church discussion group does not meet today.
Instead, we want to invite each of you to hang out and speak with other people from the church. In your conversations, we encourage you to ask the other people who they remembered during today's service, and ask them what they would be comfortable sharing with you.
You only need to share what you are comfortable sharing with others. We want to create a space where you have the chance to talk about people you miss.
If you have shared all that you want to share, just say, "That's all I want to share for now, but thank you for asking," and that will bring the discussion on this person to a close.
We also know these memories may be difficult to remember, so if you need some additional support, Pastor Craig and Pastor Kim are available after the service for you to lean on.
We hope today's service has led you further into grief, and that this journey has helped you feel gratitude amid the loss.
We hope the entire message of Jesus' death and the resurrection brings you peace in a world filled with darkness and light.
May you love the life you have here on Holy Saturday.
And may you see and embrace Jesus Christ in all.
Amen.
Amen.